Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. They offer a wide selection of high-quality plants, landscaping materials, and home decor. They do amazing high-quality work and can help you transform your indoor and outdoor living spaces into something beautiful. So stop by Casey's Outdoor Solutions today and let them know you appreciate their support for Rock Solid Radio. Visit Casey's today at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana.
Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families, and I'm here with my better half, Merrill. How are you, babe?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
It's summer, so I know you're good because you love summer.
Yes, I love summer. It's going to be in the upper 80s today. Yeah. That's just starting to get warm enough. I want to get out. Yes. Yeah,
it doesn't go well with our series, though, that we're working on about I Want It Now.
It does it perfectly.
You don't get summer all the time like you want.
But I do want it, and I crave it, and I'm not happy till I get it.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so we're going to get jumping in on this show. But, hey, you know, I have a question for you.
What?
When you go out, when you're doing life, okay, you're doing life because, you get like.
I'm scared about this.
You get just laser focused on things, just like, oh, man.
Yeah.
When you get something in your mind, like, what do you hate waiting for? What do you hate waiting for?
Waiting for?
Yeah. Now, and don't be saying like my body and stuff like that. No, that can't do that.
That's a whole nother show.
Yeah,
Actually,
okay.
I think we're going to get to that in a couple weeks. No. Gosh. Well, this is going to sound really trivial to you and those out listening. But if you know me really well, it might not. But I have this incredible craving, constant craving for Dunkin' Donut iced tea. I think we should get Dunkin' Donuts as one of our sponsors.
We've tried.
I want them to move down the street from our office. I would love to.
I can see it now. Linda with tea and the kids with donuts.
Okay, it is unsweetened tea. Okay, so with a lot of lemon. I love a lot of lemon.
You do.
And so
four. She goes four lemons in every tea.
And so I don't know. And this, I have to do this every Lent because I have to cut myself off to show that I can wait. I can go without, but I have a hard time driving by a Dunkin'.
Can I just tell you this, guys? She does wait, but the rest of our lives are miserable while she's waiting.
No, I have a hard time driving by a Dunkin' without going in. So during like Lent, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't go that way.
Yeah.
So that's really hard. I know that sounds so trivial.
It is, but I mean, I don't want to belittle it.
What about you? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that has cravings has
Linda
to be
and I,
satisfied.
we always talk about, we always say that every show that we do, we are currently battling it or we've battled it or we're, we've had an argument about it or whatever,
Yeah.
And I told Linda, I'd rather just skip this show
because this
show is all about me. Actually, this is a 4-part series. And when Linda wants to pick on me or my shortcomings, this would be a place that she goes because I have here's kind of my deal with things.
Here we go.
Now, I mean, now you tell me if I'm wrong on this,
Okay,
but this
I
is
will.
how I perceive myself.
Yeah.
I perceive myself as generally pretty go with the flow.
Yeah.
I don't, I generally lower maintenance. Like I can go do whatever.
Yep.
But when I finally get something in my mind, whether it's to buy a car, whether it's to buy a pair of shoes.
Shoes, yeah, I was just going to say shoes.
Whether it's to do whatever. I mean, like once it's in my mind, like I do not spend any time because I feel like I've already done it, like research and all that stuff. I mean, I just go pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And you're like,
my gosh. Now,
don't do that. Don't do that.
Let's talk about cars for a second because this got you in trouble about purchasing a car.
I don't consider it trouble. I consider it a learning experience, Linda.
Tell them about that experience because you had decided, like, I need a car. And so you went out and bought something and then you had buyer's remorse.
So I think we may have shared the story, but it was time for me to get a car. My vehicle was on its last leg, and we had just adopted our kids, our 3 younger ones, and I had always owned a truck. And I was like, I just kept beating myself up like, no, I can't have a truck, I need to get a little I need to get something that transports all the kids, and all this stuff.
Gosh, you say that like it's torture.
Not because of the kids, but because of the vehicle I had to go to. And so I started looking at all these little mini cross SUVs and stuff. And so I don't even want to name the car because it's not about the car. I bought one, okay? And I drove it. I drove it for about 5 or 6 months.
No. Wasn't even that long, was it?
Yeah,
like 6 weeks.
Oh, no. Okay. It wasn't that. It was about 6 months.
Somewhere in there.
Because we actually went to a marriage seminar where we wanted to work on our marriage. And we had an opportunity to speak. And part of it was just, going deep, like something that's bugging you, something that's on your mind, a regret that you had. And kind of like your tea, you said it was a trivial thing. I was like, okay, so I'm going to tell you something that's just been burning me up. You know that stupid car I've been driving? I hate every minute of it. I hate the car. I want my truck back. And but I felt like I was coming to the cross. Like, I just can't do it anymore. And if you look at me, you're like, well, then go get a stupid truck.
What the heck?
What did I do?
Oh my gosh.
Guys, I got home from that marriage thing on a Sunday, and by Monday afternoon, I was saying, "Hey, honey, guess what?"
Oh my goodness! It was like pull the trigger, and it was actually you already had done the deal. Like you were actually just inviting me down to sign some papers.
Because I said I need a ride home.
I was like, "Hang on, are you serious? Like, did you just sell a car you've had brand new car, by the way, less than 6 months?
Yeah.
And we lost our shirt on that a little bit.
Yeah, our socks,
but,
not the whole thing.
But that's instant gratification. Like I think I want this, and so.
But let me tell you. Like the first car I bought was not instant gratification. And you know how hard that was. And so I think not to dismiss any of my problems with instant gratification, but I think when you kind of know what you like I will say, hon, with most everything that I buy that way, whether it's bikes or whatever, I don't have regrets.
No.
It was a time that I put a lot of thought into it because I questioned my character, like the type of thing I want. Like, no, I don't need a truck thing. I'm going to do this other thing. And so the more thought I put into that. So some of this is to trust your instincts. And by the way, I have a truck now. It rides 10 times better. It's the same truck that I bought. And the kids transport absolutely fine in it.
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal.
Can we, while we're on the subject of cars, I'm going to put this out there.
Oh, no. I know where this is going.
So I have a vehicle that I've had it's a 10-year-old vehicle. It's got over 200,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of in the market. Okay. Now this one would want to pull the trigger like 6 months ago, but it's my car, right? So I get to pick, right?
It's up to her.
So I'm the kind that shops all over the place and then sometimes goes back
Drives me insane. Thank you.
Sometimes goes back to the same exact first dealer that I had looked at the car, whatever.
Most all the time we go back and buy the first one we saw 6 months ago.
So we just happened to have been out today, my daughter and I, and so we might have.
Newsflash.
We might have. I'm kind of saying this out. We kind of might have pulled into a dealership.
Kind of might have.
And kind of found a car that is kind of like pretty much what I'm looking for. It wasn't the color I'm looking for. It's a couple years old and it's probably in our price range. It didn't wow me. Okay. And my daughter's like, this is pretty cool, Mom. And all of a sudden, right across the lot is the exact same car in the color I want.
There was the wow car.
It's the wow car, but it's brand spanking new.
Oh.
And it's got 35 miles. I even said this in the car on the way home, not 35,000, like 35 miles. So it's brand spanking new. And so my daughter, of course, is like, oh my gosh.
Which, by the way, all of our kids suffer greatly from instant gratification
as well as their parents.
Yeah.
But she's like, this is it. We need to talk Dad into it. And I said, Mackenzie, it's not in our budget. And she's like, what's your budget? And I was like,
I think
this.
She probably said, what's a budget?
Exactly. But if it was up to her, we would have bought that car before we got home today.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about that today and we're having some fun, but we know that this is a serious subject that affects a lot of people and it affects marriages and health and relationships. And so we really just want to tackle that in this series called I Want It Now.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, guys, is instant gratification is kind of the theme, the drop behind everything for the next 4 weeks. And our topics that we're really going to grab hold of are going to be talking about entertainment, phones, just what we go to right now to please our eyes and to please our mind. There's going to be talk about sex and pornography.
What?
Yeah, woohoo, that's a show. All right. And then there's going to be one about money. A lot of these have money kind of interlaced in them, but just the money and the effects of that. And so you may have heard at different points in time some of these conversations over the years that you've listened to us. But this is the stuff that walks in our door. This is the stuff that tears families apart. If you are currently dealing with this yourself or somebody in your family, you know what it's like. And it's sometimes it's like managing the beast. You're not going to kill the beast.
No.
You're going to manage the beast and try to tame the beast. And that's really what this is about. Like like just because I've acknowledged that I struggle with like, hey, if I see it, I'm going after it. Man, that doesn't mean that's gone away. Like I still have that, and it means, okay, wait, no, take a deep breath, walk away. Yeah.
We're human and we have temptations. And so what we're going to be talking about is how do we manage that tension between our flesh and between God and what he wants for us. And so, there is a way to do that in a healthy way. We don't have just throw up our hands and say, I can't help myself because I hear that. We hear that walking in our door, or it's not my fault. Right? Or everybody's doing it, all those kind of things. So, but before we do, we definitely want to thank our sponsors.
Yeah, let's thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us and continuing to be strong supporters of what we do here at Rock Solid Radio and along with Rock Solid Families. Also, we just want to thank Maxwell Construction for them as well, being really among the first supporters of our work here and continuing to be strong supporters. So we want to thank Maxwell and Casey for coming alongside of us and continuing to do what we do. Even though sometimes we get kind of tricky little topics going on. And
we've definitely not been dancing around them.
They stand behind us.
Yeah, we're thankful. And if you haven't been checking out our shows recently, we have been tackling some really tough subjects. A couple weeks ago, we did cancel culture and what our world is saying and how we're responding to people that we don't agree with. And then just last week, we tackled a really tough one on gender confusion in our kids. So if you haven't checked that out, even if it's not in your home, you probably know someone who's struggling or hearing about their family struggling with this. So we really encourage you to go back and check it out.
The key to difficult topics, whether they're on the air here that we're putting out or in our office, the key to getting any progress within those is civility. That's the key. And so when you look at topics that are hard, we just ask you to keep civility in the mix, because civility allows us to step back and to be able to learn and to read. So when you and I deal with a tough situation, maybe with a couple that comes in, and there's a lack of civility, we set up ground rules when we're working with a couple or a family and say, hey, basically, here's the civility rules. Here's how we're going to interact. If you're paying me money to work with you, here's how we're going to interact. And if we can't do that, then all bets are off in terms of whether we're even going to work together.
Yeah.
And so civility is what allows us to come to the table and have these learning discussions. And that's what we would ask. If you hear something that you oppose or whatever, we just ask you to come to us with civility and say, let's teach each other, because there's always another way that I can look at something.
Right, and ways that we can learn. And by the way, where did you learn that? We're supposed to learn it at home.
Right.
We're supposed to learn it and have it modeled by our parents and our grandparents. And unfortunately, that's not happening as much anymore. And so our children are learning, this is what I do when I disagree with you, when I have a conflict. And so we want to really help you as parents, if you are a parent or a grandparent, to teach this to your children so that it helps them to cope with life and people who are not going to agree with them.
Right.
So why this topic, hon? Because this series is an important one, we feel. Why is it? Help our listeners, our watchers, our viewers to understand why we felt like this topic was an important one.
So instant gratification is one of the primary ways that in our belief system that Satan works on us. Instant gratification goes all the way back to the time of Adam and Eve, when we were hearing the story about you can have everything you want in this garden, but do not eat. Yes. So one little barrier, one little boundary, and all of a sudden curiosity. Oh, if I had this, I'd have all knowledge.
Right.
And
wonder why they're keeping this from us.
Yes. so much of what we're going to be talking about, when you talk about instant gratification, you cannot help but to bring in the ideas of fleshly desires. And so much of that is part of the human experience. And so there are things that we call God's nature, and there's things called human nature. And they are very, very different. And human nature came from the idea of, okay, you're going to have fleshly desires where I'm going to give you that free will. But just as we talked about before, like teaching how to get people to get through a disagreement, you have to have civility. Teaching people how to work through human nature, you have to give them what to shoot for and how to go about it. Like, well, what's the better way? And we always, hon, we come back on our show all the time and say, oh, you know what? It does sound like God's way does work better. So when you do humble yourself and you go, oh, if you do follow God's nature, how does it turn out? So anyway, and the reason why we exist, hon, that Rock Solid Families is, you know, I want to say 99.9%, probably 100% of everything that comes in our office is due to something related to human nature. Selfishness, the whole phrase,
Pride.
the term of selfishness,
Addiction,
pride.
yeah.
I want something. I'm not going to give. I'm going to, you know. And so these are all based in an instant gratification or self-gratification.
Yeah.
So you cannot be human and not experience this.
Yeah.
And even the idea that Christ took on human form. That was for the sake, like he got to experience also
Temptation.
fleshly desires.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But he, knowing God's nature and being part of God's nature, was able to put it in its proper place.
Yeah. And that, you know, I'm glad you brought up the fall of man, because really Adam and Eve and the temptation in the garden and their ability to do anything they wanted and enjoy every blessing of God's provision. But he said, do not eat out of the tree of knowledge. And he did that because he didn't want us to see the other side of what it could be. And because of that desire and that draw to wanting more, you know, that's where this all started.
Right.
And ever since then, we've struggled with this tension between God's nature and human nature, from the flesh and the spirit, from what we are, you know, our tents want, our earthly desires want, versus what God wants for us. And so we are always going to have that tension. And just like we said last week with gender confusion, hon, and this is super important, okay? Part of what we as Christians need to understand is that we all are tempted in different ways, and we all sin and fall short, okay? Sin and temptation are different things. And so we can be tempted by all kinds of stuff. I'm tempted to go out and buy that brand new car. I'm tempted
Dear
to go
Lord,
out.
help her with that temptation.
But acting on that is when the sin occurs.
Yeah.
So we can be tempted by this same-sex attraction, let's say, and not be in a sinful relationship. And so we have to understand we've got to keep those temptations in check. It's all going to happen with all of us, but it's what we do with those temptations and those cravings is what's going to lead us down that path of destruction.
Right. I mean, that is so on the target. And that's why I don't care who you are. If you are human and you're living, you can
You're
listen
tempted.
to this, because part of what we're going to talk about, hun, is it kind of is what you just alluded to, the idea of we all have strengths and weaknesses in this area. And what we often do is we get into the finger pointing and pointing to somebody else's struggle with their instant gratification. So maybe it's pornography, and it's really easy to go, oh, that's a sick person, man. I can't believe him, you know. Or maybe it's alcohol, or maybe it's money expenditure, or maybe it's same-sex, whatever it is, okay? And so it's so easy to point that out on somebody else when we are really called to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And so part of our work in this process here is going to be looking in the mirror, looking at our own strengths and weaknesses, and don't break your arm patting yourself on the back when you don't struggle in a particular area. Well,
exactly.
that's not my
That's
problem.
not my issue.
Yeah, because your other arm's going to come around and smack you in the head because you do have a problem in
Okay,
another
so
area.
this is a very silly example, but I think it's a perfect one, is that when we first got together, I'm not really a candy person. Like I could leave a candy bar sit in my car for a week.
That's ridiculous.
I know. But Merle has this
Another one of my
craving
problems, guys.
for candy. And he has told me over and over again, over the years, as we've been married, have children, please do not buy candy. So in our office, when we started Rock Solid Families and we've got mints and all this stuff, I put candy out, and you about bit my head off because you're
I
like,
still continue
why
to.
are you putting candy out? One, we have a gym and we're working about healthiness. And two, I can't let it sit there. See, I can leave a bowl of candy on my desk for a month.
I've said this before. She buys a Snicker bar. She opens a Snicker bar. She takes one bite out of it. She folds up the wrapper, puts it back in her driver console, and it sits for 2 weeks.
He'll find it. I'll be like, what is this?
And I'm like, I don't buy one Snicker bar. I buy usually 2 or 3, and I eat all of them before I get out of the parking lot.
Home Depot knows exactly who they're catering to. Because when you have to go buy a 2x4, you're also buying what, Merle?
Because I am so aware of this, I try not to. But when I fall, I usually buy some candy bar or something. But most of the time, I'm like, no. I'll tell you what, I'll just get a Diet Coke. That's what I'll do, just a Diet Coke, just so I can fake the sugar
Well, why do you
taste.
think they put the candy in the aisles of the grocery?
You don't have to convince me. I know.
Do you know when I was had young kids, there actually used to be a candyless grocery aisle where they had it because parents knew how hard it was to go down the aisle, and the kids are like, mommy. Mm-hmm. And so, and as parents, we're trying to get through the aisle and not let the kids like freak out. And so they'll give them all these things. And so the kids learned, if I scream or throw a temper tantrum, I get the candy at the grocery.
Yeah.
So what are we teaching them?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a kind of a little example, but that's an example of, it's not my vice, but maybe chips are my vice. And so it's like, I can't buy chips and leave them sitting around.
And I won't touch them.
Yeah.
They do nothing for me. So guys, I want to hit on something that's extremely important, especially when we're helping kids through this process. If I think of like a wild stallion, I think about the energy, and you got this colt coming along, and it's just full of energy, and everybody's kind of afraid to work with this thing because it's so strong and so powerful. You're like, we've got to knock the energy out of this horse, okay? And that is so not the course of action. Like if I wanted to, I could just kind of run the horse on a knocked out anesthesia of some sort. I could give him tranquilizers of some sort, and I could impair him. I could knock him down. And I would be less irritated by that horse. But that's not what God calls us to do. God does not call us to impair our children. He doesn't call us to impair ourselves. He calls us to tame ourselves, to tame the tongue, to tame your flesh. And so that way I take the same amount of energy in that crazy, strong, wild horse, and now I tame it, and I still have the same amount of strength and everything else in that horse, but now I put it into a direction. Yeah. It becomes workable. And so that's our goal here. Yeah. You're not like, just, you're
changing me. You're holding me back. You know, that's what you hear.
Yeah.
But Celebrate Recovery, we've talked about before, and it's a great Christian-based recovery group. But I have had the personal experience of people who have struggled with some kind of addictions or temptations, and they have gone cold turkey. It's like they're all or none people. And so they will go from their alcohol drinking or their pornography addiction, and they will be all in with Celebrate Recovery. And they take that energy, like you're saying, and they harness it in a God-honoring way that's going to help others. So almost it's like now my addiction now has this purpose. Like I am now using this to help others find freedom in Christ. And so I don't want them to shut up. I want them to keep going, but in a healthy, positive way for the kingdom.
Yeah. So it's like looking at a little kid that talks too much. Stop telling them to shut up and start telling them how to use that tool, because in school they got detention for talking too much, but that's actually a gift of learning that they do know how to talk. Now let's learn to use how to talk.
Probably be a great lawyer.
They become your great speakers. And so again, that's what we're really after here. Like, how do I tame myself and the people I work with? How do I help them so that we can be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
So let's get into a few steps of this. How can
Yeah.
we actually do this? As we're going to go into these other series, these other parts of the series. How
Right.
can we start?
Yeah. Well, we have to remember that instant gratification always comes with a cost.
Yeah.
And so are you able to cover the cost, or is it worth the cost? You may say, I'm allowed, we have so much freedom and liberties in this country. I'm allowed to do whatever I want. I can be any gender I want. I could, I can believe whatever I want, but I can go and drink as much as I want. I can do recreational drugs as much as I want now. But at what cost? Like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to say I'm allowed to drink 10 beers tonight if my wife's going to leave me tomorrow? Like, is it really worth it? And so we've got to really decide. It literally could be that it costs more money.
Right. Yeah. Money could be at the root of it for sure. Yeah. So the whole idea that all instant gratification always comes with a cost.
Yeah.
The second thing, and I just find ourselves talking more and more about this in so many different things that we do, is we have to understand that instant gratification is so deeply connected in our brain centers with emotions.
Yeah.
And in particular, feelings, the feel good, okay? And so literally we talk about the neurotransmitter of dopamine, and dopamine is sometimes, that's where the term dope comes from, and that whole idea of it makes me feel good or different or better. And so the idea that instant gratification floods that feel-good emotion. And so this is a very real thing, all right? You're literally changing the biochemistry going on in the brain. And so it's not like, well, you should just calm down and get that under control. I mean, you're changing actually what's going on inside of your brain and body. So understanding the power of emotions and what emotions invoke are going to be really, really important.
Yep. And
as we manage this.
As we talk about dopamine, we also need to talk about the prefrontal cortex. That is the front part of the brain that is developing and handles about self-control and emotion balance. And so if we allow our children to feed these instant gratifications, whether it be by the click of a button, and we'll be talking a lot more about this, or alcohol or drug use as a young age, we are stunting that development and that growth of that prefrontal cortex. Also, trauma. When you have a child who has suffered abuse or neglect, or a teen or a young adult, that is going to stunt that growth and not allow them to be able to wait on things.
Yes. Yeah.
So for us to feed the instant gratification with feeding it is not going to help them ever learn how to develop it.
Right.
That delay.
Yes. So we've talked about in other shows the idea of and I talk about this with people in a counseling session. I talk about I think of logical thinking and emotions on a spectrum. Okay, you're on a spectrum, and that we have to kind of dance somewhere in that middle, because when we get out to the far edges, we become crazy weird. Okay, we don't succeed very well.
Yeah,
and,
it's not a good balance.
Right, and so if I'm flooded with this instant gratification, logical thinking just falls off of the chart, and emotions take over, and I do things. Remember, emotions have a lot of energy with them, and they invoke action. Okay, and so the next thing you know, I'm having a regret from buying some stupid car that I don't like. Okay, and so there you go. You've got to understand that it is very much trying to do this dance with emotions and logical thinking. And the more you understand that, the more you can go, okay, wait, this is where my brain's going.
This would be an emotional purchase right now.
That's right. I need to step away. I know what this feels like.
So let's go back to my car. I'm with my 16-year-old daughter who was like, whoa, this is it, And so if I had let those emotions just run free, we would have been signing a deal and calling you kind of like you did with your truck.
Yeah.
And so better to walk away, to let the emotion kind of calm down and kind of do more logical thinking, like this is way out of our budget. And so to kind of think about what would be a better plan. And so that's about setting boundaries. We're looking at managing that tension with boundaries, putting up a guardrail and saying, this is not healthy for me to walk in this place because this place takes me down a path where I can't just drink one. I have to drink 10.
Right.
And that might be fine with my neighbor or my friend, but for me, it's not a place I'm going to go. That's a boundary I'm going to set.
Can we talk about the idea of, so when you set a boundary, hun, you can only successfully set boundaries in your logically thinking mind.
Yeah.
So that means you can't decide that you're going to set a boundary when you're in the parking lot or in the candy aisle. Okay.
Yeah.
Like if
Or
I'm,
in anger.
right. So when
Yeah.
we're helping our kids at the grocery store, before I even go in the grocery
Mm-hmm.
store, I set the boundary while their brain is still calm. Okay. Like, okay, guys, we're getting ready to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what we're going to do when we walk through this aisle, and here's what the boundaries are.
Yep.
That way, their logical brain is hearing it. Your logical mind is not coming unglued because you've like, okay, here's what I'm going to do.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so then when you get into the place of the emotions and feelings and
So remember what we talked about.
gratification trying to come around, and then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't go across that fence.
Yeah.
And so please remember that you got to do a little bit of pre-work
Yes.
before you
Yes.
think you're going to have any success with your instant gratification.
Yeah. So think about the areas of your life that you struggle with. And for instance, you mentioned about the grocery. When our two older ones would go to the grocery, it wasn't an issue. We didn't really even have to have these conversations. But with our three youngest, holy cow, it was
Right.
like a nightmare. And so I had to sit in the parking lot with the car closed and say, hey guys, we're going in. We're not buying candy. We're not buying any cereal. We're just buying milk and eggs. That's all we need. Okay. So we're not going down the toy aisle. We're not going down the candy aisle. This is what we're going. Does everybody understand? And so we set a boundary. And I had to follow that too. I couldn't be like, oh, look at this, look at that.
Right.
Because if I want them to listen, I have to also follow it
Yeah,
myself.
absolutely. But it pays. And by the way, just because you do it the first time doesn't mean it works. It has
Yeah,
to be
a
practice.
pattern.
And that's
It's taken
why
5 years.
You do have failures in these.
Yeah.
Matthew 4, 1 through 4. This is something that helps humble us to know that we're in great company. Okay. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil after fasting 40 days and 40 nights. So I'm done right there. Okay, I'm done right there.
You won't make it 40 days.
He was hungry, and mine says, duh. Yeah, he was hungry. My gosh, the tempter came to him and said, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. And Jesus answered, it is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. In other words, seeking God's nature, okay, depending on God. God, help pull me out of my human flesh and pull me into your spirit so that I can overcome and understand what would be best for me. And so this is one of Christ's, one of his first opportunities where he shows us how to basically deflect our flesh pulling on us.
Now, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking about how hungry I would be. And if I had the ability to turn a rock into bread, that's a no-brainer for my human desire.
Yeah. And so, by the way, I'm not saying that your friends or your family members are Satan, but Satan uses people sometimes to draw us into
I've
places
referred
and
to
things.
you.
You have.
When she
Get
brings
back from me,
candy,
Satan.
I say,
You
Satan,
do.
get away from
you
me.
You do. And I'm like, oh, great, I'm Satan now. But his point is that this is a temptation, and Satan has kind of used you in a way to kind of draw me in. And so I've got to be better at that. And so I'm not the one that says, oh, you can come and have one drink. Oh, it'll be okay. She won't care if you're on this site or at this bar or whatever. And so you got to decide, like, this is a guardrail. I can't be around those people because they take me down. I can't be around those places. I can't do these things. And so I have used this word before, hun, and that is the word HALT, the acronym HALT. And so sometimes temptations come when we are in these 4 areas. Okay. And you mentioned H.
That's my hungry.
Okay. We do things and say things that we don't want and regret because we're hungry. Angry is the A, when we're just so full of emotion. Someone's hurt us, someone's lied to us, and man, things come out. The other L is lonely. Sometimes out of loneliness, maybe our husband works late, or maybe he's gone, she's gone this weekend, and so you're lonely. And so those temptations come in those areas. And then the T,
Mr. Tired.
Mr. Tired.
Don't even mess with me when I'm tired.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so those areas is when we fall weak. And that's when the instant gratification, I just talked to this with somebody recently. When I'm tired or stressed out, I eat.
Yeah.
And so I got to do something different in that area when we get tempted to do those things.
Yeah. So, hey, you got to tune in over the next 4 weeks after this week, and you've got to be ready to just listen and to take this on. And we would always ask, don't take this on with the idea of how you're going to use it to change somebody else. You know, that will be your first roadblock. Use this as a way that you would first examine yourself, okay? Yeah. This is about examining yourself, and that's really where the first change takes place. Yeah. So please don't listen to this and go, oh, so-and-so needs to listen and feed it to them, okay?
Yeah.
You can obviously always start to share conversation of your struggles, of what you struggle with, and then open the door to how maybe they could get help.
Yeah.
But chances are you're not going to be received very well when you go, oh, you need to listen to this because this is your problem.
And you might be sitting there listening or watching this, and I've got a lot of people out there that have said, hey, we listen to your shows, we watch your shows, and thank you, by the way. Thank you for being one of those followers. I do want you to share the show, but I don't want you to sit there on your high horse and pretentiously say, oh, I don't have these issues, okay, because I don't do drugs or I don't abuse alcohol. But like I said, mine was Duncan, and I had to learn that I had to keep that in check. I had to keep that in control. And so, 1 John 2:15 through 17 says, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. And the world and its desires pass away. But whoever does the will of the God lives forever. So we're going to be really tackling that this month is how do we be in the world, but not of the world?
Yeah. And it's a management job. It is not one of perfection.
No.
And so please tune in, listen to us again. We want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions and Maxwell Construction for coming alongside and helping us out. We also, Hun, as you said, we want to thank all of our listeners. Please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our shows, and share our shows. We greatly appreciate that as we see our field of listeners and viewers expand and getting the encouragement from you guys. So we want to continue to do what we're doing, especially if we see that you're benefiting. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
All right.
Let's go get some Dunkin'.
No, I was going to go get a Snickers bar.
How about a car?
Oh, my gosh.
Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Maxwell Construction, who has been our sponsor since the very beginning. For over 30 years, Maxwell has delivered the highest quality projects by holding to their core values of customer satisfaction, positive attitude, respect, and excellence. So if you have any kind of commercial construction need, give Maxwell Construction a call today at 812-537-2200.